short video, hopefully, on sharpening hunting points. Now this one here has a crack in it, so if it cracks during the video, I apologize, but this is what I'm going to use since it's like the only piece I have that resembles a hunting point. Anything that is napped that I currently have, I can sell or whatever. They just fly out the door, so I have nothing except this one here to demonstrate. I just wanted to do this quickly. Sharpening a hunting point. Now, there are two ways that I sharpen points, with two different types of tools, I should say. I sharpen points with two different types of tools, one or the other, sometimes both. A pointy tip or a spatula tip. Alright, these are worn down because I've just recently used them on another video. But the spatula or the pointy tip, the pointier the better in some cases. Okay? But it doesn't have to be really, really pointy, but I do like them pointy when sharpening. Now, if you are new to the channel, I've got lots of videos on the actual making of points, and all you gotta do is go to the last part. So a lot of times I have part 1, part 2, part 3. Go to the last part where I finish up the point, where I do the final work. That'll show you how I sharpen. But I need to find, I'm looking for something right now. Looking for my file and I can't find it. Anyway, this is dedicated specifically to sharpening, so you don't have to search through a bunch of stuff. Okay? Or you don't have to wait. Theoretically. I cannot find my file. Alright, so here, I'm going to sharpen these up, or dress this up with a sharpening stone. If you're using natural tools and you insist on using natural tools, same thing, spatula tool or pointy tip. You can make them out of antler or bone. I recommend antler because bone likes to split. I don't recommend buffalo horn. I don't recommend sheep horn. Any kind of horn I don't recommend because it's too soft. I recommend the hardest antler there is, in case you don't know, is white-tailed deer. But I have been using elk antler. Why? Because elk antler is easy to cut into pieces and make stuff from, because it's only the outer shell of the antler that's very tough. And it also happens to be very flexible, which is useful because you can make bows with elk antler. All right. Or it's not useful because of that. It's elk antler is useful in that not only can you make flint-knapping tools, but you can also make bows with it. Of course, you'll back it with sinew. It's not just pure elk antler, in case you don't know. All right, so why would you have to sharpen a hunting point? Well, most of the time what happens is you lose the tip. And yes, I'm going to break the tip off. There you go. How do you sharpen it? What if it's worse than that? Now, of course, when I was asked to demonstrate how to sharpen, they probably did not mean how to repoint it or put another point on it. But I'm going to start with that first. Okay? And I'll put like a timestamp somewhere in the description or wherever, maybe in the comments, so it'll direct you to each part. So you don't have to go through this whole first 4.5 minutes of blah blah blah. You go straight to the point sharpening, straight to the edge sharpening, etc. Okay. You just press downward on the top of the point of the of the point of the point. The point of the point. The workpiece. The point of the workpiece. You press down. You're beveling. Okay, 3 flakes. 1, 2, 3. Right there, it creates a little bevel. Okay. Again, we're going to be doing 90% beveling when we are doing the retouching and the sharpening. 1, 2, 3. It's a bevel. There's a bevel here that I just put in there. Flip it over. Same thing. Push down on the top surface of the workpiece and push downward. You notice have not been grinding. Please take note. I have not been grinding at all. Push down on the top. If it doesn't work, try again. I'm using a pointy tip. And when you use a pointy tip, it gets a little bit serrated. Keep pushing downward until you shape it into the shape you want. There's no grinding. Just flip it over, push down. All you're doing every time you make a pass is you're essentially beveling the edge. You need to hear little snaps. If you are not hearing snaps, if you're hearing crunches, like if it's crunching the whole time, you need to be up further on the top of the workpiece and or sharpen the tip of the tool, or start getting better material for your hunting points. Sometimes this stuff is not cooperative. Okay, you can leave it like that. That is resharpened good enough for a hunting point. Now if you want to thin it down, instead of pushing downward only, push a little bit inward. Now this is where it gets complicated, because you push inward on a sharp edge, it's going to crush. You have to scratch it a little bit. Scratch it a little bit the opposite way first, and then the way you're going to knap second, and then push a flake off in the inward direction slightly. Okay? Right there, see that flake pushed inward to thin out the tip because it was a little bit thick. Now you look, where else can I push? The first impulse is to start pushing in again because, ooh, I thinned it. No. Start again from the top down. I see a little bit sticking out right there. For you guys who have the eye for watchmaker precision, you can see that little piece sticking down right there. Some of you guys won't notice it while you're napping, but you've got to notice these little details. See that little bit sticking down there? We're going to wipe that off with a very careful push down. Do you have to wipe those off? No, you don't. You can leave it. It's still sharp. But for those of you who want to know, 99% of you want to know, sharpen the tip down enough. This is probably not enough, but I've worked with insufficient tools long enough to know that I can probably get it done. Just on the top, push down, and that's all you need. It's just a little bitty flake removal. Very, very tiny. I still see some of it. Try again. This time, I'm going to push more inward. So scratch backwards just a little bit. Remember, watchmaker precision. And then down, scratch a little bit, and then push a flake off. Did it do it? I think it did it. You want to thin it more? Scratch up first. Up, scratch up. Scratch down. Make sure there's not any delicate areas. If it's got a concavity, don't push on that area. It messed it up, right? Oh well. Move to this area. See, the scratching took away a lot. I don't want to push there because it's going to take away more. You always push on a protruding spot. Up, scratch, down, scratch, push. If it doesn't work, up, scratch, down, scratch, try a little bit harder. If it doesn't work, it's not working, right? Up, scratch, you can move down a little bit, down, scratch, push harder. Keep going. If it doesn't work at all, like it's not working, go back, flip it over, and I'm going to put another bevel pass on this. And I think what's happening is my tip is not sharp enough. It's just kind of glancing off the edge a little bit. But to get it to work, you just got to get used to the material. Now that it's got a bevel, same procedure. Look for a protrusion, scratch up, scratch down a little bit, and then push. That did a thinning flake. Protrusion, right there. Scratch up, scratch down, push. Another protrusion. Since it's still thick, it's okay to be thick at the tip, but if you want to know how to thin it, scratch up, scratch down, push. It gets to be pretty fast after you're experienced. An experienced napper, if you ask him how to sharpen a point, he's going to be thinking, what? It's just a regular process of flint knapping. There's no specific sharpening technique. I'm inventing one right now in live time just to be more methodical. My flaking is normally random. I don't go up, scratch, down, scratch, push when I'm doing my videos. What I do is I look for a spot that's already dull. Is it close enough to the spot where I want to thin? If it is, opportunistic flake. Take an opportunistic flake, flip it over. If I see a dull spot I can push off without scratching up or down, I will take it. I don't see any dull spots, scratch up. If that's good enough, I'll push. If it's not good enough, push down. How do you know if it's good enough? You can see the dull spot. If you can't see the dull spot, assume it's dull. Assume it's sharp and then make it dull. If you can't see a dull spot, assume it's sharp, make it dull, and then push. Push on a protrusion. Always push on a protrusion. Don't push in the middle of a depression. Push on something sticking out. I think they call those deltas sometimes, right? Push on those whenever you're sharpening. You can leave it bumpy and serrated like this. Serrations are normally intentionally done. You don't really call a pass like this a pass to create serrations. It's just a pass. Serrations are created the same way as notches are created, just smaller. Serrations are smaller. So I'm going to finish up on this. If I was going to use this for hunting, that's about as good as I want. Maybe a little bit thinner. I don't know. Dress it up a little bit. Just watch the endings of a lot of my videos and you'll see how to do the final sharpening. But the takeaway from this, scratch up, scratch down, push, scratch up, scratch down, push, scratch up, scratch down. Make sure you're pushing on a protrusion or a part sticking out. Scratch up, scratch down, push, scratch up, scratch down, push. If you can't get it thin down, don't worry about it. It doesn't really matter. If it's still a little thick up here at the tip, it's okay. Now, that's that technique. There's another way to do it. All right. Oops, I broke off the tip of my hunting point. what do? You can do what a lot of Native Americans used to do, is only beveling, no flipping, right? Just decide where you want to put the bevel. Push on the top, next spot over, push down, next spot over, push down, next spot over, push down, next spot over, push down. Just keep pushing down. You're going to bevel it only. Push down, push down, push down, push down. Only pushing down, that's it. Until you get the right profile. Push down, push down. You're just pushing down, that's it. There's no thinning, there's no flipping over, except for doing the other side. Just pushing down. Push down on the top, that's it. That's it. Thick. Oh well, that's the way they used to do the beveled points. It's done. The one reason why beveling was very common is because it's easy. For new guys, I recommend doing the beveling because all you're doing is pushing down on the tip. Same on the edge. Let's say that you broke the edge. How do I sharpen that? Well, you can leave it. It doesn't really matter. A little ding on the edge doesn't matter. But if you don't like it, you just go, let's see. Okay, well, let's bevel it. Start below it, and then you end up above it. Push down. Keep pushing down. Notice I'm not doing any grinding. Okay, that's it. It's sharp. You want to be more neat about it? Okay. As long as you have enough width. Push down, push down, push down. Just keep pushing down on the top. That's it. Now if you get little step fractures in here when you're pushing down, two things are happening. Two things might be happening, or maybe both. The material might not be easy to sharpen. I'll show you in a minute. Like obsidian. Obsidian is notorious for not being able to be sharpened this way. Or you just don't have the technique down quite right yet. You're not pushing down. You're not pushing down. You tend to be pushing too much inward. You're going to get step fractures. You need to push straight down. Let's see. Even outward. It's either straight down or outward when you're scraping. Put on the top, scrape downward. It's going to pop downward. And it might even pop outward. But either straight down, no inward, straight down, or maybe even a little bit outward on the edge. Good enough. As long as there's no dull spots that you can see. Get a magnifying glass if you have to. If you don't see any dull spots. Now if you see white crushing, let's see if this will do it. Let's see, what time is it? Okay. If you see white powdery area, like on obsidian is notorious for this stuff. Let's see if I can do it on purpose here. See that white powdery area? You're trying to bevel and sharpen and you're just getting that white powdery area. What do? Well, on obsidian, I don't use this type of point. I use the spatula tool. Spatula tool can be used on obsidian or chert or flint or anything else. But for obsidian, I tend to use the flat. Why? Because it doesn't make as much contact with the edge. It's very thin. This tool is very thin, so when it pops off a flake, there's nothing really touching the edge. Like when you do this with a rounded tip and it scratches downward, the distance across the very tip is wider than this across the top of that. There's very little across the top of that spatula tool. Compare it to the other tool. See that? Very minimal contact with the edge on the spatula tool. So same thing. The easiest way to do this is push downward, down, and down, or a little bit outward, down. Do not push inward at all when you're doing this particular technique. Just put the spatula tool either this way or that way. It doesn't really matter. Depends on the size of the flake you want. I tend to do it like this because it's a little bit smaller flake. Downward, on top, downward. No grinding. You notice I did not pre-grind the edge. Why do I say that? Because new guys will grind too much. Don't worry about the grinding part. Just push downward. You're going to get a bevel. All right, you might say, this is easy to do on a flake. No, actually it's harder because it's smoother. This surface up here is very slick. You've got to make sure the tool does not slip. Now, if you've got a unifacial tool and it's all slick like this, or if you have a slab that's slick, you got to hold your flaker firmly. Don't let it slip around, and push downward. Downward only. No inward, and shape it that way. There's a thick area on your point or something, let's just say. Work into it. It's going to slip and slide, especially on obsidian. Just work down. Maybe wear 2 gloves instead of 1. I always get those little flake mishaps. All right, so downward, downward, downward. It's not going to make it thin, and sometimes you'll get this stuff. See that? Sometimes you'll get that. You can put your flaker in there, push downward, and get rid of some of that. But you might just have to live with it. It's not dull there. You might just have to live with that little area being that way. I was being a little bit too aggressive there. So just, after a while you'll get used to it. Practice on some flakes or something, and then go to your hunting point. You can do that with the pointed tool as well. I mean, you can sharpen with the pointed tool. All right, so let's go over here somewhere where it's where I have a very slick portion. Let's do this with the, let's see. Let's do this with the pointed tool with a rounded tip. Set the tool on top, push downward, and get the feel for it. If it was too much pressure, just go a little bit lightly, a bit lighter, and go to the next protrusion, push downward, hold it steady because it's going to slip all around. Push downward, downward, downward. You should hear a little snap. Okay, if you don't hear snaps, if all you hear is this stuff, that means the tip of your tool is too fat. Thin it down. If you thin it all the way down to like a needle tip and you're still feeling crushing, I don't know what to tell you. Something you're doing is not right. You have to push straight down. Straight down. Let's say you have an issue like a really fat edge. You push really fat edge downward. Can you do that? Nope, you can't do that. You can try, but you can't. Right? If you have a really fat edge on your tool, you're going to have to watch my videos to see how to thin that down. Quickly, I'll show you. You push in one direction this way, turn it over, push in the other direction, you're going to zigzag it. I'm able to show you. You're going to zigzag this. And don't use any abrading unless you're experienced. If you're experienced, you don't need to know how to do this. But the new guys, they really don't know how to sharpen or make edges or even to do basic flint knapping. So you push on the previous flake scar. Sometimes you'll need a lot of pressure. Sometimes it'll stall. If it's stalling, you've got way too much thickness. I got way too much thickness for a point, but I'm just going to, I got way too much thickness for a hunting point. I'm just showing you that even though this is exaggeratingly bad, I can still do it. If I can do it on this, you can do it on a thinner piece. That's why I'm doing it on this thick piece. And obsidian is notorious for not being able to get sharpened easily. And I'm not grinding at all. You can do the grinding thing. A lot of experienced guys will do that. They will just do the preliminary dulling, but I don't do it when I'm resharpening. I just do the basic stuff, all right? Even with that big thick edge, you can still get sharpness. Right there, it's thin right there, it is sharp. This edge is sharp with that zigzag. Okay, this is exaggerated, but you get the idea. If you have a thick hunting point or even a thick knife, you can zigzag it and still have an edge that will work. Now you go back to your workshop or wherever you do your knapping and stuff, you're not out in the field, you can grind that down and do the proper knapping on it. All right, what else can I do here? Let's see. I think that's it. I was trying to keep this video short. If you have further questions, just ask in the comment section. I can't think of another issue that might come up that's not addressed in the last portions of many of my videos. I think I address every single issue. So yeah, 2 styles of tips for sharpening hunting points. You can make these any size. You can make them bigger than this or smaller than this. These are just 20 penny nails. 20 penny nails. Both of them. And this is just ground down flat, and this is ground down to a point. They're not hammered hard to be hardened or anything. You can do that with copper as well. You can do that with aluminum as well. Or with bone or antler. Same, everything is the same. You're going to have a harder time with natural tools because they break. But otherwise, sometimes a natural tool will actually put a better edge on your hunting point. Okay? All right, that's it.